The self is not built in moments of intensity. It is built in repetition. What you do once shows what is possible. What you do daily shapes who you become. This is what Iqbal meant by Khudi. The self does not rise through breakthroughs. It rises through consistency, through habits that slowly turn effort into identity. Today, we continue our journey through Allama Khudi, Allama Iqbal's exploration of the self and its strength. This is episode 15. Settle in, breathe, and let the reflection begin. The self is not built in moments of intensity. It is built in patterns. What we do once reveals possibility. What we do repeatedly reveals identity. A single act may inspire, but only habit transforms. The self becomes what it practices. Many misunderstand transformation. They wait for breakthroughs, for turning points, for dramatic changes. But the self does not change dramatically. It changes quietly, through accumulation. Small actions, repeated faithfully, reshape the soul. Consistency is the invisible architecture of character. What appears as strength is often repetition unseen. What appears as discipline is usually habit refined. What appears as confidence is familiarity earned. Nothing stable is sudden. The self grows tired, not from effort, but from inconsistency. Starting and stopping, promising and abandoning, beginning and resetting. Inconsistency fractures energy. Consistency concentrates it. A life without rhythm drains the self. A life with rhythm supports it. Habit creates rhythm. Rhythm reduces resistance. Resistance consumes strength. Consistency conserves it. The self matures when it stops negotiating with itself every day. Negotiation drains will. Habit replaces negotiation with structure. Structure carries the self. When motivation fades, many believe consistency is boring. But boredom is not the enemy of growth. Disarray is. Boredom can be endured. Disarray corrodes. The self prefers novelty, but transformation prefers repetition. Every habit is a vote for a future self, not a promise. A vote. Votes accumulate. Identity is elected daily. The self cannot rise above the level of its daily practice. Occasional excellence cannot outweigh persistent neglect. A small discipline, repeated daily, outperforms rare greatness. Consistency is not rigidity. It is reliability. Rigidity breaks under change. Reliability adapts without collapse. The self does not need a perfect routine. It needs a dependable one. Habit directs energy downward into ease, or upward into strength. Left unattended, habit defaults to comfort. Comfort requires no effort, but comfort erodes the self when left ungoverned. Intentional habit rescues energy from drift. The self does not lack potential. It lacks patterns that honor potential. Potential without habit remains abstract. Habit turns the abstract into lived reality. Every day presents the same test, in different disguises. Will the self choose alignment or convenience? The outcome of this choice, repeated, becomes destiny. Consistency trains identity. The self becomes familiar with its own effort. Effort stops feeling heroic and starts feeling normal. Normal is powerful. Normal determines lifestyle. Lifestyle shapes existence. The self that relies on emotion is unstable. Emotion fluctuates. Habit stabilizes. Habit carries the self through emotional weather. Storms exhaust emotion. Habit endures. The disciplined self does not wait to feel ready. Readiness appears after engagement. Engagement sustained becomes confidence. Confidence sustained becomes identity. Inconsistency breeds self-distrust. Each broken promise weakens the relationship between intention and action. Trust in the self erodes silently. Consistency repairs it, one kept promise at a time. The self listens to its own behavior. Behavior teaches the self what it can expect from itself. When behavior is reliable, the self relaxes. Inattention fades. Clarity increases. Habit creates predictability. Predictability frees attention. When basic actions are stable, the mind is free for higher work. Chaos wastes cognitive energy. Order protects it. The self often resists habit because habit removes drama. But drama costs focus. The self does not grow dramatically. It grows steadily. Steadiness is the quiet strength most people overlook. Consistency is not perfection. Missing a day does not destroy habit. Abandoning the return does. The habit lives in the return. Returning without self-punishment is maturity. The self must learn to value fidelity over intensity. Intensity impresses the mind. Fidelity builds the soul. Intensity burns out. Fidelity compounds. A habit practiced gently, but daily, outlives a habit practiced violently, but rarely. Violence toward the self is not discipline. It is impatience disguised as ambition. The self evolves When discipline feels humane. Humane discipline acknowledges limits without surrendering direction. Direction matters more than speed. Habit does not imprison freedom. Habit preserves it. When foundational behaviors are fixed, freedom expands elsewhere. The self chooses once and avoids daily conflict. The mind resists repetition because repetition feels ordinary. But the extraordinary is built on the ordinary well executed. No great self is built on chaos. Every strong self rests on careful repetition. Habits are the hands with which the self sculpts time. Time left untouched shapes nothing. Time shaped daily becomes destiny. The self cannot escape habit. The only choice is whose habit it will be. Habit imposed by convenience, or habit chosen with purpose. One weakens, one builds. The self grows tired of grand resolutions because they demand immediate transformation. Habit demands patience. Patience teaches humility. Humility stabilizes growth. The strongest selves do not demand much of themselves each day. They demand consistency, small effort, clear direction, faithful return. This is how strength survives time. The self that stays grows. The self that jumps constantly dissolves. Staying power is becoming power. Consistency changes the relationship between effort and resistance. At the beginning, every action feels heavy. Resistance rises with every step. But when action repeats, resistance weakens. The body adjusts. The mind adapts. The path becomes familiar. What once required force now requires presence. The self suffers more from restarting than from continuing. Restarting demands willpower. Continuing relies on momentum. Momentum is the quiet ally of consistency. The self that protects momentum protects growth. Habit removes the burden of constant decision. Decision drains energy. Habit conserves it. When behavior is decided in advance, energy is freed for creativity, awareness, and learning. A disciplined life is not restrictive. It is spacious. The self often confuses freedom with choice, but too much choice exhausts the will. Habit reduces unnecessary choice by limiting trivial decisions. Habit expands meaningful freedom. Freedom grows where chaos is removed. Consistency transforms difficulty into familiarity. Familiarity neutralizes fear. When the self knows what effort feels like, effort loses intimidation. Fear thrives on the unknown. Habit dissolves the unknown. Through repetition, the self that practices daily becomes intimate with discomfort. Discomfort stops feeling threatening and begins to feel instructive. This intimacy is strength. Strength is not absence of strain. Strength is competence within strain. Consistency also refines perception. Subtle improvements appear. Progress becomes visible. Only to those who repeat. Those who stop too often never stay long enough to witness change. Many abandon growth because progress does not announce itself. Habit teaches patience. Patience trains eyesight. Only patient eyes see slow transformation. The self matures when it learns to trust process instead of craving immediate results. Immediate reward addiction destroys consistency. Process loyalty builds depth. Depth outlasts excitement. Habit also stabilizes identity. The self no longer asks, "Is this who I am today?" Behavior answers automatically. This stability reduces inner friction. Less friction means more energy for becoming. Consistency turns effort into identity. At first, I am trying. Later, I am consistent. Then, this is who I am. Identity shifts quietly. The self that relies on habit is less vulnerable to mood. Mood fluctuates. Habit holds. Even low-energy days contribute forward motion. Motion matters more than intensity. Consistency also teaches forgiveness. Every human self falters. Missing a practice is not failure. Failure is refusing return. Consistent people do not avoid failure. They make failure temporary. The self that learns to return learns resilience. Resilience is not toughness. Resilience is continuity. The ability to resume without losing direction. Direction preserved is victory. Habit multiplies small strengths. A single small weakness, repeated daily, can sabotage growth. A single small discipline, repeated daily, can redeem it. Time amplifies habit. In either direction, consistency shapes time. Days stop slipping away unnoticed. Each day carries intention. Time becomes personal. Personal time feels meaningful. Meaning stabilizes motivation. The self feels grounded when days resemble each other. In purpose, not in monotony. Repetition of purpose does not empty life. It anchors it. The self that practices consistency develops an internal rhythm. This rhythm replaces anxiety. Anxiety feeds on unpredictability. Predictable effort calms the nervous system. Calm enables clarity. The self that is calm becomes patient. Patient with progress. Patient with self. Patient with struggle. Impatience breaks habit. Patience protects it. Consistency also trains humility. It reveals how slowly the self truly changes. This realism protects the self from arrogance and despair. Growth is neither sudden nor hopeless. It is gradual. The habit-forming self accepts the long timeline. It does not demand mastery. It commits to practice. Practice precedes mastery. Mastery arrives quietly. Consistency also strengthens conscience. When values are enacted daily, they become embodied. Ethics becomes instinct. The self no longer debates right and wrong constantly. Action aligns automatically. Habit aligns the inner world with the outer world. Fewer contradictions arise. Integrity strengthens. Integrity simplifies life. Life simplified feels lighter, even when effortful. Consistency protects meaning from erosion. Meaning dissolves when effort is sporadic. Meaning deepens when effort is steady. Meaning preserved gives weight to existence. The self that works faithfully experiences less existential confusion. Confusion thrives when life lacks structure. Structure provides orientation. Orientation reduces anxiety. Habit is not glamorous. It rarely feels heroic. But habit builds the heroic self. The heroic moment rests on countless ordinary days. Live deliberately. The self must unlearn the fantasy of overnight transformation. Transformation arrives through loyalty to daily effort. Loyalty tests sincerity. Sincerity deepens strength. Consistency weakens temptation. Temptation thrives in gaps. Habit closes gaps. Closed gaps leave little room for impulse to dominate. The self that is consistent does not grow dramatically. It grows inevitably. Inevitability is more powerful than inspiration. Inspiration fades. Inevitability persists. At a certain point, the self notices that effort feels lighter, not because the self is stronger, but because resistance has diminished. Resistance loses ground where habit stands firm. Consistency changes the question from "Will I do it today?" to "This is what I do." Questions require energy. Statements conserve it. The mind relaxes. In certainty, the disciplined self does not need to be convinced daily. Convincing is exhausting. Habit eliminates negotiation. Negotiation drains life force. Habit protects it. Consistency transforms life. From series of struggles into a continuous practice. Practice feels purposeful. Purpose sustains effort. Sustained effort builds identity. Identity directs destiny. The self that keeps returning eventually realizes growth is not demanding. Inconsistency was. Steady effort unburdens the soul. There comes a moment when the self understands that consistency is not discipline imposed from outside. It is dignity maintained from within. The self remains loyal to what it knows is right, not because it is forced, but because it has become natural. At this stage, effort feels quieter, not easier, but steadier. The noise of resistance fades. The self no longer argues with itself about whether to continue. Continuing is assumed. This assumption is strength. Consistency replaces anxiety. Anxiety lives in uncertainty. When action is steady, the future becomes predictable enough for the self to relax. Relaxation restores clarity. Clarity supports better action. The cycle reinforces itself. The consistent self feels less urgency and more direction. Urgency burns energy. Direction preserves it. Direction moves forward, even when speed slows. Movement matters more than pace. Consistent effort builds trust with time. Time stops feeling like an enemy that steals potential. Time becomes an ally that multiplies effort. Each day contributes. Nothing is wasted. The self that persists through ordinary days is not surprised by extraordinary moments. Extraordinary moments are simply the visible expression of invisible preparation. Consistency also prepares the self for disruption. When life changes unexpectedly, the consistent self adapts quickly. Structure absorbs shock. Chaos collapses under shock. Habit is resilience in practice. There will be seasons when consistency feels unrewarded. No praise. No visible progress. No recognition. These seasons test sincerity. The self must ask whether growth is for display or for becoming. Those who endure this phase develop depth. Depth changes everything. Depth stabilizes emotion. Depth clarifies thought. Depth strengthens presence. A deep self is not easily shaken. Depth is earned slowly. The consistent self develops faith in process, not blind faith. Experienced faith. Faith born from repetition. That proves effort compounds. This faith silences doubt. Doubt only thrives where consistency is weak. Consistency reshapes desire. Desire matures. When it waits, waiting transforms craving into commitment. Commitment anchors identity. Anchored identity does not drift. The self learns not to demand constant validation. Validation becomes unnecessary when effort is internalized. Internal satisfaction replaces external approval. Freedom increases as dependence decreases. Consistency removes desperation. Desperation seeks shortcuts. Shortcuts sabotage growth. The self that trusts consistency accepts the long path. Long paths build durable selves over time. The self notices fewer inner conflicts. Values and behavior align. This alignment creates peace. Peace is not rest. Peace is coherence. The self no longer feels split between who it wants to be and what it does. Action reflects intention. Intention shapes action. The loop closes. Integrity stabilizes. Consistency also teaches generosity. The self that is stable has energy to give. Giving does not drain it. Sharing becomes possible because the foundation is secure. Insecure selves protect. Secure selves contribute. The self realizes that greatness was never dramatic. Greatness was faithful. Faithful to effort. Faithful to values. Faithful to return. Return makes consistency human. A missed day does not destroy progress. Refusing to resume does. Continuity defines identity. Interruption is temporary. Commitment persists. Eventually, consistency alters perception of selfhood. The self stops asking, "Can I do this?" It knows. Not out of arrogance. Out of familiarity. Familiarity is confidence internalized. This confidence is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not demand recognition. It acts. Action continues. This is mature strength. The consistent self does not feel exceptional. It feels grounded. Grounded selves change the world. Without spectacle, their influence is steady. Their presence reliable. Consistency also prepares the self for transcendence. A fragmented self cannot rise. Only a cohesive self moves beyond survival. Consistency binds fragments into unified direction. The self finally understands that becoming was never about intensity. It was about loyalty. Loyalty to daily effort. Loyalty to growth. Loyalty to what matters. When no one is watching, habits quietly carry the soul toward destiny. No drama. No announcement. Just movement. Movement sustained. becomes becoming. At the end, the self does not remember isolated peaks. It remembers continuity, days connected, effort repeated, a life lived deliberately. This is substance. This is weight. This is reality. The self recognizes that it did not need to conquer life. It needed to stay. Stay with the practice. Stay with responsibility. Stay with truth. Stay with effort. Staying was the victory. Consistency does not shout. It endures. And because it endures, it transforms everything it touches, including the self.